Why won't my shoe fly? Eh? See, our problems are so familiar. Sometimes, just sometimes, it gets boring being a reporter. You can literally keep your scripts from years ago and just change a few details over time. If you did, for example, at least 25 people were feared dead at bra 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 following few hours of showers, this year you can keep the same script and just say 75 people are feared dead at bra 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 following fewer minutes of showers. We are that visionary. But wait a minute, I tell you, the month of May has kept too long for my liking. Or is it just me? It's been 5 weeks already, Charlie, and if you have not been broke at some point, you need a "can I see your shouting" kind of face. Good thing about being broke, though, is it gets many people thinking. Don't get it twisted. Poverty is still not a virtue. In my case, though, being broke this month got me thinking of a friend who owes me some money. So I decided to give him a call. Unfortunately, it was a Saturday, and this friend of mine is an Adventist. To help him observe the Sabbath and keep it holy, I decided against calling him for my own money. Now, for all of you who took sabbatical leave from the news cycle this week, I will help you observe it while we keep it playful. Here on Backpage on City TV with me, Caleb Kudah. An ambitious young man once declared, after all, the black man, is capable of managing his own affairs. Well, a few decades later, it is not clear if the black man is simply unwilling to manage his own affairs or he is just...
I hear the incompetent one says he wants to come back. he wants to come and do more damage. As if he didn't do enough damage. Well, we are waiting for him. We are waiting for him. We are waiting for him. Oh my God.
Oh my God. This one, who told you the opposite of capable is...
I hear the incompetent one says he wants to come back. He wants to come and do more damage. As if he didn't do enough damage. Well, we are waiting for him. We are waiting for him. We are waiting for him. Oh my God.
Oh my God, boss, don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, well, let's see if the unfolding stories of the week will prove the young man who said the black man is capable of managing his own affairs right or otherwise. Now, growing up, I always thought when it rains cats and dogs, then my fellow number 9s and our brothers from Ulu, shouts to 6th zone Ulu, you know, I thought we will always have a blast when it rains cats and dogs. My bad. I was wrong. That is Adabaka Old Timers, really, and the street is flooded. Earlier we saw litter all over, and the situation here is one of that is dire. Indeed, I was speechless, but this guy who has lived at Circle close to the scene of the June 3 disaster left me almost devastated.
Less than 30 minutes of rain. I mean, look, just look at the effect. And then this thing has been occurring every year. How are we going to continue like this? It's rather unfortunate.
Do you have fears anyone may be drowned in this?
It is possible. Didn't you hear what happened June 3rd at the filling station? Do you get me? And I don't know, and we are still behaving as if we are not learning from what is happening. There is something that we have realized with our leaders. If we don't mobilize and then agitate, they will not act. So for now, we are going to mobilize ourselves, the youth of this area. We are going to follow them and we'll attack them.
Brother, please, don't. Do it, please. Don't do it. Don't do it, please. Don't do that. But my Lord Atachia and your fellow 123 or 125, I'm not sure. Grandma has a message for you from Adonna.
Abano mu boye kura odon mu eyema asese every year omu ye odon mu aye omu ye odon mu kwa mini we wetumi ababolu odon mu ye pa omu cho ayese de bia so be ye no omo my mattress no my aduane de bi omu yin so mu aye pa omu cho.
So she is saying that for a very long time, successive governments have failed by, according to her, failing to dredge the door, for which the rains always flood this area. Mami Musao, and she saying how na affect you? How has it affected you?
Every say 1 week in the asay yenema every day so better pay yenema say oh say you told you no package say you no the cook got am so come to me to ma unu ya so on the I say because say me to beans because say so come say me dey cook got am maboka o ti ase ndi aban ye panu cho on show don ma ye on yi don ma ye panu cho no tie no ye betumi dey assist story video.
First of all, is it true all NADMO officials do is wait for people to be ravaged by floods only to share mattresses to them? Well, Grandma says not again. Secondly, if the Donu has indeed become a football park, why isn't the Black Star training there? Not a bad idea. They don't want to win, I guess. Now, lastly, Mayor of Accra. Dear Mayor, Grandma says when the floods destroy her foodstuff, she pours it into the drains. Actually, she was praising how efficient your task force is. You know, see, not only Grandma, Mommy too. She was showing just how efficient Ghana works. You can throw refuse into the drains and nobody will do you foco. Anyway, shouts to the Minister for Special Initiative. Boys have forgotten you even exist. But this structural mate has been publicizing the dam you built at Shashi without, publicity. For the irrigation exercise it has been undertaking for moving cars, and not crops, but moving cars.
Why do you think one down?
But Your Excellency, the president of the Ghanaian people. The Ghanaian people say a video of onlookers cheering a truck driver on as he drove through flood waters until he finally fell into a gutter, only for the onlookers to start blaming the driver, is what some of your elephant-sized squad are doing to you right now. Sasa, after cheering him on Sasa, some even say, well, how can you spend 20 years of your life telling Ghanaians you are the man to be president because you can fix these things, only for you to come and... But Your Excellency, you know me, I will always defend you, right? I always tell them all these things are legacy problems, period. Besides, sometimes every second term as an agronaso. But Nanai, Nanado, right? He's actually done some. He's done a lot. Under his watch, all the banks doing dirty business, he cleaned them all. The cleaning was so massive that even nature, the rains, have joined the Bank of Ghana to clean a bank in Medina. Ayo, that was the banking hall. I just loved how the other customer raised his leg in the air like he was in an accident ward ready for amputation. Hey, banking hall. Anyway, don't forget the question I'm asking you. Is the black man capable of managing his own affairs, or he's just unwilling to manage his own affairs? Wait, before you answer that question, let me show you this video.
For the past 10 days, liquid waste truck drivers who operate in Tema, Ashalibutri, Adringano and its environs have been at a loss as to how to dislodge their collected waste. In frustration, the truck drivers drove their trucks loaded with the fecal matter to the closed-down dump site. According to eyewitnesses, some of the drivers released the liquid waste onto the road and adjoining bushes after they were denied entry.
Oh, that was so cute. Did you hear the sound of that? Oh my God. So this is what has happened, right? Over the previous weekend, the drivers loaded their truck with heavy waste. They got to where they dislodged it at the end and were told the place has been acquired by a rich man who runs a waste management company. So they can't dislodge the way. Now the drivers drove the lodge back to the communities where they enlodged them from. After keeping the things in the communities for so long, the drivers got fed up and drove back to the scene and started dislodging the thing. This is Ghana, oh, this is Ghana. Let me see you shouting. Like, it's so impressive. The way we manage our own, oh, Africa. Adafu. Kabinanga, wahala. Kabina flats, wahala. Kabing, nanga, now want to, wahala. Let me take you to our dear Nana's garden, because in our dear Nana's garden, planted here below, many bulky rosewood. Chinese is what they call.
We've taken action against illegal mining and what it is doing both to our environment and to the pollution of our water bodies. We have banned the harvesting of a particular species of fruit rosewood in order to maintain our forests. And finally, we have some 20,000 young Ghanaians who are planting 10 million trees across the country as we're going along.
Hello, Charles Bisius. How are you doing? We are proud of your work. Auntie Galam saying, great job. Sir John Kiddies, keep on keeping on. We are planting 10 million trees. Maybe so. You know me, I love trees. So if anyone says we should use some of the FSHS money to even plant more trees, I may say yes. But wait. Are we planting 10 million trees in the second term or I'm just asking. Anyway, about the rosewood, no. Senior Minister has been doing a great job. Great job. Great job.
The trucks were overloaded and were liable to a fine of 5,500 Ghana cedis respectively. They initially insisted that until the fine had been fully paid, the trucks could not be allowed to leave. But a simple call from above changed the narrative, as the trucks had to be allowed to leave without paying the fines.
We first intercepted the vehicles and weighed them. And when you weigh every car, you ask of the contents, and they disclosed that it was rosewood. So my boys directed them to park. So I came and asked them to park. Then some group also appeared that they are from they are not Yoko. No, it's not Yoko that came first. It was not GRA. It was senior minister's office personnel. They special team. They said they intercepted the vehicle for a long while. I said, okay, me, I don't have that problem. Whether you intercept the vehicle for a long while or not, we have to do our work.
Those of you who are saying we should rechristen senior rosewood ministers, it's not fine. Stop that. I mean, the rosewood basically is in high demand around the world, okay? But there is global ban on it as it is an endangered species. It's a protected species. Here in Ghana, export of rosewood has been the highest in the recent years, particularly when the ban actually took effect. We get little from the illegal export, but in other parts of the world, the money they make from rosewood, that. So why do they get a call from the office of the senior minister?
The encounter almost turned physical as officials from the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority in the company of some military personnel refused to release the keys to the trucks carrying the rosewood to officers from the Economic and Organized Crime Office. The confrontation as to who must process the truck was a major issue, as the two state agencies for several hours were at each other's throats.
Wait, they were almost at each other's throats, enforcers at each other's throats for hours, and the drivers bolted, and we don't know who was behind those rosewoods being hauled away. And the call from the senior minister led to the release of those trucks without even paying for the fine for overloading the trucks with banned. Remember what His Excellency said in right? Remember? See.
We have banned the harvesting of a particular species of fruit rosewood in order to maintain our forests.
Anyway, Forestry Commission says the scuffle shows government agencies are working.
That is good. It wasn't a clash. What it means is that we are all getting the same information, because it's a good thing to have maybe the public very much aware to assist us in that kind of collaboration. Once the ban is in place, everybody is aware. We continue to speak to that. We continue to detail our staff to be able to arrest anybody dealing rules. So what it means is that all the three institutions got their information independently.
At this point, please close your eyes for a moment of prayer.
Oh, my Lord, please come lay your hands on me.
Still in Nana's garden, a shallot. Shallot, onions and kitty. A shallot that was evicted in favor of a ginger has been transplanted to Obi Manso in a UN jardin. Ghanaians say since the shallot was evicted, they have been stuck with onions and ginger. Some say they miss the heat in the shallots. Others too say, oh, who buys shallots these days? We like the ginger. But some too say, oh, the ginger is even showing signs of the shallot. Just that those who feel the heat are at the other side, where some who felt the heat were until recently, when the shallot was evicted, they are now feeling the heat. In all these, there is a Brian. Every day he's throwing party without food in Facebook. That Brian. As for him, Sisterin said, "Share." When he talks back, then they hold their nose. Bad. I don't even understand what that is. But some people say, oh, bad is not that bad. But guess what? Airbad says he should have been consulted before the transplanting, because according to him, the new garden the Charlotte is going now, it's not safe. There no people say, oh no, Airbad no, and then apparently for a 10-minute interview on a show hosted by Grace, he made his own poster and attributed some titles to himself. That one to people say, Kai, Airbad again, no, pretty brother Grace.
Get the backstory of the major news stories on press conference. Hear from the editors and reporters behind the biggest stories of the week.
Politics, democracy is expensive, that's a fact. I mean, it's not on the scale of what we do here, but also whether you like it or not, there's a problem with it. But then also, I think, per where I said, that if the NDC wasn't in opposition, they may not have put this amount at this level.
Press conference every Sunday at 8 p.m. with Duke Mensa Opoku, only on City TV.
Welcome back to Backpage on City TV. My name is Caleb Kudah. Now, in the wake of terrorism attacks in the West African sub-region, we went out to talk to some Christians on church security. Some of the responses were as troubling as the scare of terrorism itself.
My phone was stolen in church years back. Yes.
How did it happen?
I think it was time for praises, and I left my phone on the seat. Yeah, after everything, when I sat down, I didn't find the phone anymore. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're all in the spirit, I guess. I don't know who stole the phone. It was so sad.
I normally feel unsafe. We only come to church believing God that we are safe because we came to pray. So He should be protecting us. But for security aspect, I don't think we have one.
Anytime your bishop commends you in the hands of the Most High for your security without any concrete measures to safeguard your security in church, here's what you can respectfully share with your bishop.
Let's remember, even in the scriptures, after the creation, Adam and Eve sinned against God, and God drove them from the Garden of Eden. God did not leave the Garden of Eden bare like that. God is omnipresent God. He can see everything wherever He is. He can see everything. But why is that God planted the cherubim there? Armed them that they should guard there, and anybody coming to pass, they should slay that person. It tells you God Himself is a security conscious God. But why is that our pastors, after the prayers, that is the end? Because we know God will provide the security.
Boys, Kasao, even God is security conscious. I mean, you should have just left the garden without anyway, but it sends a lot of sense to all of us, right? Now, from the scare of bloody attacks, let's talk about blood. You know, ladies have a way of garnishing your name when they need some favors from you. I don't know if you've experienced that. Yeah. I suspected years ago one of my sisters needed a favor just by how she called me. I thought it was something out of the world, only for her to ask if I could buy her a pod. Is that all? So I took the bunny and walked straight to the shop where I met a beautiful shop attendant. I specifically asked her for the exact specification because apparently the different colors you see on the parts have different meanings, whether it has an eagle's wing or a dove's wing. Things mean different things I never knew. I was under strict instructions, so I placed the order. Now, some eyes beat a lady used to eye me in way. I mean, what was happening? I was so lost. Period.
I'd like to appeal to the Minister of Finance that the tax on pad should be removed. Pad is classified as a luxury item, and the Ministry of Finance has slapped a 20% tax on it. Mr. Speaker, many young girls cannot afford it. Pad is not a luxury item. Being classified as that, if I may borrow words I heard during 2016 election, is insensitive, is unnecessary, and is a nuisance. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance, I'm appealing to him. 20% tax on pad is excessive. It makes many young girls unable to afford it, and they are using rags. Rags have health hazards for the young girls. So sanitary pads should be tax-free to allow young girls to have access to them.
Now, I completely agree with our Idam Amenya, convener of Happy School Girl Project, when she and her team say a 20% tax on sanitary pads is injustice tax. And we support the call by the Pando MP for the tax to be scrapped. But seriously, our pads are luxury. I thought they were a necessity. Oh, what is happening to the as a Papa sermon and all of that? That they do something, try and do something. In fact, the advocacy groups say you should consider, you should consider complementing free SHS with free parts. I think this is a good idea. You should consider that, all right? And doesn't it seem strange to you that some guys will go all ends just to swim in the Red Sea, but claim they are disgusted at the conversation around menstrual hygiene? It's amazing. But thanks to Abel Delali and her militants for the persistent education of menstrual hygiene, I didn't know how heated things could get until But seriously, if the Akufo-Addo government complements free SHS with free PADs, this is how we will all jubilate. Did you see Bernard? Oh my God. Somebody sent me a message. He said, why is Bernard dancing like Amati the days proverbial? I remember Matos, you. Hey, that's my boss. Don't get me into trouble. I like you. But clearly you saw the difference between Igbe men and Ewe men. It's quite clear. Look, it's time to end the show. And I still am asking you, is it that the black man is not capable of managing his own affairs, or he's just unwilling to manage his own affairs? Let me end with something Bernard told us some time ago. He said, you can't be a crocodile in Nigeria and become an alligator in Australia. In effect, you have to be excellent at whatever you do. He said, be too proud to be mediocre. Ghana, for mediocrity, not also from the streets to the schools to the church to the media to the studio, everywhere. Tale, see you another time, but that's a war against the discipline.
Please press menu on your remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access CCTV on your television. CCTV can be accessed on a multi-TV digibox. Tune into CCTV and experience your world. CCTV, it's your world.
Business Dashboard is sponsored by ADB Bank, Truly Agric, and more.
Hello and welcome to the Business Dashboard on City TV. My name is Bobie Osei. Coming up on the Business Dashboard today. Banking consultant Nana Otue-Champon charges the Bank of Ghana to publish the names of microfinance companies in good standing following the collapse of over 300 microfinance companies. Also, consumers of fuel products to pay a little more for fuel as IES predicts a marginal increase in the prices of fuel. And later on, GCB to expand its operations through digitization. Details of these stories and many others, including some exclusive interviews, analysis on the top trending business issues, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Our first story now. Now, the Bank of Ghana has revoked the licenses of 192 insolvent microfinance companies. In addition, the licenses of another 155 insolvent microfinance companies that have ceased operations have also been revoked. The following report brings us more details.
According to the Bank of Ghana, the actions were taken pursuant to Section 1231 of the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act 2016. The central bank, in a press release, explained that the revocation of the licenses of the institutions is to get rid of insolvent and dormant institutions that have no reasonable prospects of rehabilitation and have denied depositors access to their deposits, thereby constituting a threat to the stability of the financial system. To remedy the situation, the government of Ghana has made funds available to enable the receiver, PwC, pay depositors after their claims were validated. In line with the hierarchy of creditor claims set out under Act 930, other creditors of the failed institutions will be settled by the receiver upon validation of their claims, and to the extent that the receiver is able to realize value from the remaining assets of these institutions.
Let's now go on to the telephone line and speak with banking consultant Nana Oto Echiampon for some more clarity on the revocation of the licenses of over 300 microfinance companies. Hello, Nana Oto.
Yes.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on the Business Dashboard. It's a pleasure having you on the Business Dashboard. Well, for starters, we know that about 9 local banks basically lost their license as a result of the banking sector cleanup. And now we are hearing that the Bank of Ghana has revoked the licenses of over 300 microfinance companies. How significant is this?
Your voice is low.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, okay.
Great, sir. So the question I'm asking is that how significant is this exercise in strengthening Ghana's financial sector more or less to offer optimal service to the general public, sir?
Well, it is important and it's part of the process. The deposit-taking institutions have got 5 groups: universal banks, savings and loans, finance houses, rural banks, and microfinance. Now, the universal bank sector has been resolved, as you rightly said in your introduction, with 9 banks being resolved, and from 36, we are left with 23. Now, the microfinance sector also had 484, and some 386 are being resolved, leaving us with just under 100. So it's all part of the process. Now, the microfinance is being resolved together with rural banks, with a sum of just under 1 billion from the government of Ghana. And from that stage, we move on to the savings and loans and finance houses, where the regulator is looking for 7 billion to resolve them, all in an effort to ensure that no depositor loses a penny, and that the banking sector becomes resilient and well capitalized.
Great. So it appears to be a very comprehensive strategy to, like you said, ensure that the financial sector is well capitalized and is in a very credible position. But from where you sit, have we learned enough lessons to ensure that we do not get back to this position again, sir?
Oh, yes. The issue is, ideally, all 5 should have been resolved together. But when you add the figures up, we are left with some 21 billion that we should have had to resolve all 5 simultaneously. So as resources are scarce, they are being done on piecemeal. So having dealt with the universal banks, now dealing with the microfinance, and eventually the savings and loans, then if we can only bring confidence into the system, it will be good for customers and it will be good for investors as well.
So I know that the protection of the depositors is one primary objective. Now, the way forward, what key things do you believe need to be put in place to ensure that we are in a sound position moving forward? What key things from where you stand?
Well, the way forward is we are going to defer to the regulator to ensure that when institutions are weak, otherwise they are insolvent, they don't allow them to fester, but to resolve them sooner rather than later. So that promise has been given by the regulator, and we hold them by that. That going forward, we want institutions that are not performing, institutions that are insolvent, to be resolved sooner rather than later, so that we end up with strong and resilient institutions.
Now 347 having their licenses been revoked. One may say that it would definitely come with some attendant job losses. Now, how do we cope with this? Are we looking at skills training? What exactly? How are we going to cope with the number of jobs that will be lost as a result of this cleanup of the microfinance?
Yes, the job losses are inevitable. But then, when you take, for instance, the 155 institutions that had virtually ceased trading but were still on the books, there were no jobs there because they were not trading. Now, the 192 that were trading were hanging a threat in the sense that they were insolvent. And by insolvency, it means you are not able to pay your liabilities as and when they fell due. And so if you put a deposit there, which becomes a liability for the institution, and you want your money and you can't get it, then there was really no job there because they were just hanging by the thread. So this yes, there will be job losses, but there are some kind of necessary evils that we need to be able to sanitize the system.
Now, speaking of sanitizing the system, like the universal banks, we saw the minimum capital requirements basically being raised. Now, for the microfinance institutions, are we expecting some legislative maneuvering? Are we expecting some raising of their minimum capital? What exactly should we expect going forward?
Okay, their minimum capital is 2 million for the microfinance, and for the rural banks, is 1 million. Now, when some of those that they have resolved, they have not met that 2 million minimum capital, which started about a year ago. Before that, their minimum capital was 500,000 Ghana cedis. So when they resolve them, those that will be left will be those that have been able to meet the 2 million minimum capital. So that's why we keep saying that you will then be left with strong, resilient, and well-capitalized institutions. Well,
Nanotu Champon, we're very grateful for spending time with us on the Business Dashboard. We'll get back to you.
Always talking to City.
Thank you, Daddy. Thank you. Well, we have the banking consultants, Nana Otue Champon. They're giving us some clarity on what's happening within the microfinance space. Essentially, basically mentioning that the actions of the regulator or the central bank is supposed to protect depositors and also strengthen the financial sector moving forward. Now, still staying within the financial sector space, the board of directors of GCB Bank has approved 30 pesos dividend per share to shareholders of the bank for 2018. Now, this amounts to 79.5 million cedis, representing 200% increase. The bank's profit also increased by 39.28% in the same year. Here are details of how the bank performed in 2018.
The figure shows that GCB Bank's profit in 2018 was 326.7 million cedis compared to the 234 million cedis recorded in 2017. According to the bank, its focus will be geared towards exploiting opportunities within a strategic framework as well as those that fall within risk-return construct and enhances shareholder value. The bank also stated that mobile wallet, which is in the offing, will also drive the the company's digital agenda closer to its goals. Speaking at an annual general meeting, the board chairman of the bank, Jude Kofi Arthur, assured that the bank will continue to intensify its digitization drive to secure greater share of the unbanked market.
You notice from the profitability that in 2017 our profit dropped because of the issues of the sale and assumption and the difficulties of assimilating two banks into GCB. Now, right from that, we set up our business plan, our 4-year strategic plan, which aimed at one, consolidating our existing gains and making a foray into the unbanked sector to make sure that we can leverage on our existing platforms and make investments that will bring in the money of the unbanked sector profitably into the banking sector. So that in itself is going to build a foundation for our deposit base. You know, some time ago we could rely on the fact that we had just 187 branches. How many of you go to your branches these days? You go to ATMs, you go to things, you do e-money, you do that. So these are some of the things that we are focusing on to make sure that we can continue to retain a larger share of the money movement within the whole economy.
On his part, the managing director of the bank, Anselm Ransford Ajite Sowa, explained that GCB Bank's 2018 profitability shows that the board and management are pursuing activities in the right direction.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that we are aggressively looking to do even better than we did this year. So going forward, we are looking at all sorts of markets, all sorts of opportunities to move the bank forward.
Meanwhile, the board chairman, Jude Arthur, has maintained that the bank will explore other areas such as mortgage to expand its operations.
All those things are on the drawing board. GCB is thinking not only of mortgage, GCB is also thinking of serious housing deficits. And the real reason of the housing deficit is because there isn't proper funds mobilization that meets mortgage requirements, you know. So we as a large bank with some resources, we feel that it is an area that we should go into because you see, people gravitate towards where they need. Lots of people need mortgages and so on to fund houses. So we are now looking at it stage by stage in terms of with state housing. The papers are yet to get to the board, but management has been given the mandate to explore those issues because, you see, these are the intermediations within any good economy that bring welfare to the people. So we should not ignore things like mortgage, credit schemes, e-money transactions, and so on. They are very important.
According to a statement captured in its report, GCB Bank is well capitalized with a strong, balanced sheet.
Well, from the financial sector, let's head to the downstream sector of the petroleum industry. Now, consumers should expect a marginal increase in the price of fuel at the various pumps as the price of fuel per gallon slowly reaches 24 Ghana cedis. Now, this is according to the Institute of Energy Security, IES. The following report has more details.
The IES says the increments in price of fuel is occasioned by the 1.09% rise in average Brent crude price, as well as a corresponding 4.38% and 0.46% increase in prices of gasoline and gas oil on the international markets, respectively. The IES added the increase can also be attributed to the marginal depreciation of the cedi against the US dollar. Speaking to City Business News, research analyst at the IES, Migdad Mohammed, said despite the price stabilization and recovery levy mechanism by the National Petroleum Authority, prices of fuel are likely to go up.
We anticipate fuel prices to go up marginally for the first price. This is after a series of stability. I think 3 consecutive stability in prices we have experienced at the moment. And the previous stability we experienced, the first factor being the stability of the currency, the local cedi against the dollar, and then secondly, being the application of the price stabilization and recovery levy by the MPA. For the previous window, the May 2nd pricing window, prices could have gone up, but for the intervention of the MPA by eliminating the 12% petrol, the 10% in diesel price stabilization mechanism. But for this window, given what we have seen, the international market, and also how the cedi has depreciated against the dollar, we anticipate prices to go up.
Fuel prices have largely remained stable since the beginning of the year, with fuel prices, as said by the oil marketing companies, largely remaining stable, with a few marketers reviewing prices downwards to either attract or maintain their share of the fuel markets.
You're still watching the Business Dashboard on City TV. We're taking a break. When we return, Intravenous Infusions PLC wants the influx of imported drugs controlled. Do stay with us for the details.
ADB is pleased to roll out its new mobile banking app. Download the ADB mobile application from Google Play Store or the App Store and enjoy limitless possibilities on your smartphone. After downloading the ADB mobile app, sign up at your nearest ADB branch and change your default password, which will be sent to your email after setup. You are activated to enjoy the most convenient and smart way of banking. Experience mobile banking anywhere in any time, such as account balance and transaction inquiry, instant transfer of funds to other customers in different domestic banks, transfer to any mobile money wallet in Ghana, airtime top-up for all networks, utility payments for DSTV, GoTV, ECG, Surfline, Vodafone broadband, and postpaid. ADB, truly a Greek, and more.
It's about the use of electronic equipment and how we dispose them.
We look for the cooper, the price, all of everything. We look for it, but the rubber and the rubbish there, we throw it away.
Those in the business say this is how they earn a living.
The kilo in 1 pound is 5.
But do they consider the environmental and health hazard? Ghana, a dumping site for electronic waste.
You can see that huge ball is indeed a very scary.
Today, Agbogboloshi is a mountain of hazards.
What is happening here is that copper wire is being extracted from cables that have been brought here at the Agbogboloshi dam site.
Coming up this June, Counting the Cost, the electronic dump site in Agbogboloshi, a CTTV documentary.
It's a pleasure having you back on the Business Dashboard. Let's head to the pharmaceutical industry for our next story. Now, Intravenous Infusion PLC, local manufacturers of intravenous products, has appealed to government to control cheap importation of intravenous products to avert the collapse of local pharmaceutical companies. Now, according to the company, most of the intravenous products, mainly imported from China, do not meet the required standards set by the Ghana Health Service. Nanoye Ankra has more in the next report.
Speaking to City Business News after the company took its turn at the Ghana Stock Exchange Facts Behind the Figures series, management of Intravenous Infusions PLC disclosed that the imported infusions rigged IV bottles is making their products uncompetitive because the imported ones are cheaper.
We have built a plant in Ghana which has the capacity to produce enough IVs for the whole country. And we have a situation where others are importing rigid bottles. So we have a situation where the World Health Organization standard is predominantly for infusions to be administered via collapsible IV bags. What we are noticing is that the people who are importing go for the cheaper option, which is the rigid bottles, and those two products are not the same. Their mode of administration, one via the rigid bottle and one via the collapsible bag, are not the same. From a safety point, the IV collapsible bag is much more safer. But the other social point is that by having this in Ghana, by having the factory in Ghana, we are creating jobs for the university students. As I told you, my QC guy, he came from the university straight, he was in the factory, and he got a job. So we are creating jobs. We are creating jobs in the country. So if we allow the importation to continue, from a social point, it will impact on our ability to engage the 150 or so employees who are at the factory.
They also raised concerns that imported products, which are mainly from China and India, may pose health risk to patients who use them because health officials in Ghana are unable to screen the content before they are used. Managing Director of the company, David Kluche, said importation, if not controlled, may collapse their business in the coming years.
The local manufacturers were exempt from duty and other taxes at the ports when we imported raw materials. That had been a benefit that the manufacturers had enjoyed. However, there was VAT on finished products that were imported into the country to serve as some sort of price differential between the two of us. But when the government took that out, in return for them to for imported products to also reduce their price, then you realize that they were able to now become significantly cheaper than the local products. Well, it can't be good for companies that are manufacturing in Ghana, because if the same product can be manufactured in Ghana and other people are allowed to bring it in here, then very soon we were going to be challenged, because we are not a very, very big market, and therefore there should be certain safeguards for the local manufacturers here. And that is why we advocate that for those products that can be manufactured here, that the FDA is satisfied that there is capacity and the quality is here, then those products should go on the restricted list so that nobody can bring it into the country. And that is what we are appealing to the government, the Ministry of Health, and our local FDA authorities to seriously look into.
The company also wants government to review the removal of the VAT from imported pharmaceutical products, as it is affecting the operations of local manufacturers. The company made profit of 2.84 million cedis in 2018, which is a 110 million cedis increase of the 2.73 million cedis recorded in 2017.
Well, from pharmaceutical industry, let's head to the telecommunications sector. And the Deputy Minister of Communications, George Anda, has commended the private sector for the initiatives it has taken in enhancing digitization in the country. And according to him, the projects undertaken by the private sector, such as the introduction of 4 and 4.5G internet services in the country, will play a key role in helping government digitize the economy. Now, government has stated that it will, among other things, ensure that all government transactions will be done electronically by 2020. Speaking at the launch of MTN Turbonet, George Anda encouraged the private sector to do more to help fast-track the growth of the economy.
In the 21st century, broadband has become a critical infrastructure prerequisite as ICT bears considerable impact in the creation of the information society. Broadband adoption is serving as a foundation for economic growth, as Selim had mentioned, job creation, global competitiveness, and a better way of life. Increased broadband penetration, which is reliable, affordable, and accessible nationwide, will certainly propel Ghana's participation in the fourth industrial revolution, considering the significant impact and opportunities that will be unleashed for the benefit of our citizens. It will also facilitate the modernization of government processes in service delivery, even as we work towards building our digital economy and establish Ghana as a leader in ICT innovations in sub-Saharan Africa by 2023. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the ministry is always encouraged when the private sector implement initiatives that complement the efforts of government to attain the objectives of our digital agenda.
This is still the Business Dashboard on City TV. We're taking a break. When we return, we'll head over to the international front where Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg survives an attempt to make him step down as the company's chairman. The details when we return.
Every weekday at 8 p.m., City Newsroom brings you analysis of the major news stories of the day. In-depth, comprehensive, and researched. It's 1 hour of local news from 8 to 9 p.m. It's the City Newsroom, weekdays on City TV. Regular news checks as they unfold. 2020 news, all day, all the time. Politics, sports, entertainment, business, and more. 2020 news. We bring you the world in 20 minutes.
Welcome back to the Business Dashboard on City TV. Let's head to the international front for our story. Now, an attempt to make Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg step down as the company's chairman has failed. Now, at the company's annual general meeting on Thursday, shareholders had the opportunity to vote on Mr. Zuckerberg's leadership. Now, Mr. Zuckerberg is both Facebook's chief executive and the chairman of its board of directors. He controls about 60% of the voting power and would only have lost if he voted against himself. Now, some investors have called for him to step down as chairman as they believe this would help him focus on running the company. Now, one of those investors is Trillion Asset Management, which owned Facebook shares worth about $7 million. Quote, if he can focus on being the CEO and let somebody else focus on being independent board chair, that would be a much better situation. Jonas Kron, senior vice president at Trillium, told the BBC ahead of the vote. And that's how we end today's edition of the Business Dashboard. For more news, please visit citybusinessnews.com. It's been a pleasure coming your way. My name is Bobiose. As always, on behalf of the rest of the team here, I would like to say many thanks to you for spending your time with us. Do keep watching City TV.
Business Dashboard is sponsored by ADB Bank, Truly Agric, and more.
I believe that President Trump will understand that this is not the way to solve things.
Mexico's president sends his foreign minister to Washington as Donald Trump threatens sanctions over immigration. I'm Rochelle Carey. This is Al Jazeera Live from Doha. Also coming up.
We've been pretty clear about trade with Iran. There are items that are sanctioned and there are items that are not.
The U.S. warns European leaders about trying to bypass sanctions to conduct trade with Iran. Sudan's military council calls the protests outside army headquarters a threat to the country and shuts down Al Jazeera's bureau in Khartoum. And as New York unveils a new memorial honoring those killed on 9/11, thousands still suffer from their injuries. The Mexican foreign minister is due to travel to Washington on Friday to meet with U.S. officials. He's called the treatment of his country unjust and says it doesn't make economic sense. U.S. President Donald Trump posted this video on Twitter, which appears to show 1,000 migrants trying to cross the border. Trump says he'll impose tariffs on goods from Mexico unless it stops illegal immigration. He's warned that the 5% tariff will be enforced from June 10th and will be increased every month until something is done. So let's take a look at how these tariffs will impact U.S.-Mexico trade. A number of industries could be hit, with the auto industry looking most vulnerable. Automakers shipped more than $52 billion worth of vehicles to the U.S. from Mexican assembly plants last year. Another $32 billion in auto parts flowed to the U.S. from Mexican factories. And some of the most popular vehicles sold in the U.S. are made in Mexico, including General Motors, Chevrolet, and Volkswagen. So we have two reporters covering this developing story. Rosalind Jordan is in Washington, D.C., where Mexico's foreign minister is headed. First, Manuel Rapalo joins us live from Mexico City. Manuel, what has the reaction been there in Mexico?
An official dialogue has yet to take place between officials in Mexico and in the United States. Until now, all of the dialogue that we've heard has taken place mainly on social media, following those statements on Thursday evening by President Trump, those threats to impose tariffs on Mexico. There was a letter sent via Twitter by Mexican President López Obrador calling for a renewed dialogue. We once again heard from President Obrador during a morning press conference on Friday. Take a listen.
I believe this measure will be further analyzed by the United States government. I believe that President Trump will understand that this is not the way to solve things. I think that there will be a correction, if not right away, at some point. Because these measures are neither in the interest of Mexicans nor United States citizens.
And Rochelle, at the moment, the Mexican foreign minister, Marcelo Ebrard, is on his way to Washington, D.C. to continue that dialogue, to begin dialogue both on trade and on the issue of immigration. Now, one thing that does seem rather counterintuitive is that the United States, Canada, and Mexico are on the verge of signing a trilateral trade agreement. So it almost seems inappropriate, the timing of these threats by the American president, saying that he will impose tariffs on Mexico if they do not do more to stem the flow of migrants making their way north toward the United States. So while we continue to hear President Trump going to Twitter, blaming Mexico for taking somewhere around 30% of the auto industry away from the United States, blaming Mexico for the migrant crisis, saying that Mexico is not doing enough, the President of the United States is also not saying exactly what more he wants Mexico to do to stem the flow of migration. Rochelle.
All right, Manuel Rapalo, live for us in Mexico City. Thank you. Let's go to Rosalind Jordan now, who is in Washington, D.C. So, Roz, has there been any more information coming out of Washington, out of the White House about this?
Well, certainly there have been conflicting messages about what the whole point of imposing tariffs on all Mexican goods coming into the U.S. would do. The president had tweeted that this was about dealing with manufacturing, but then his aides are actually suggesting that it has everything to do with what they have called the crisis on the border between the U.S. and Mexico, that it's about migrants coming from Central America, trying to reach the United States, and trying to make Mexico actually do more to prevent these people from trying to cross the border into the United States. This is what Sarah Sanders, the president's spokesperson, had to say to reporters earlier on Friday.
We've been giving them advance warning for months. We've asked them repeatedly and told them they have to do more. Let's not forget that the average individual that crosses over the southern border of Mexico, it takes 21 days before they reach the United States border. That gives them 3 weeks in which to break up, particularly these large groups. Just this week, we had over 1,000 people that moved as a massive group through Mexico and came to our border untouched.
Now, of course, the business community doesn't like any surprises, and so it might not be a surprise, Rochelle, to find out that at midday, the Dow Jones Industrial Average has been down. It's been coming close to being 300 points below its closing value from Thursday. That's not a good sign. There are reports now suggesting that major business groups here in the U.S. are contemplating perhaps suing the Trump administration because of what these groups are calling a hostile environment for U.S. businesses to operate within. And there's also a real concern about whether this idea of using tariffs to try to punish Mexico, not for its economic behavior, but for an unrelated purpose, might be used against other countries for non-business related reasons. If so, that injects in a whole new level of unpredictability, especially if, as the president has said in this case, he would be using tariffs to deal with matters of national security and not with matters of the national economy.
All right, Rosalind Jordan, live for us in Washington, D.C. Thank you. The U.S. Secretary of State is in Berlin trying to ramp up the pressure on Europeans to support its policy towards Iran. In his first official visit to Germany, Mike Pompeo and Chancellor Angela Merkel discussed the rising tension with Tehran. Germany is party to the 2015 nuclear agreement that the U.S. pulled out of last year. European leaders have since set up a framework for trade with Iran to avoid U.S. sanctions.
We will have plenty of issues to discuss today. The world is in unrest indeed. First and foremost is Iran. How can we make sure that Iran doesn't have any nuclear weapons? How can we prevent further aggressive actions on the part of Iran?
Pompeo's visit comes on the day the UN nuclear watchdog reports Iran has stayed within the required limits of its atomic activities. The International Atomic Energy Agency says Tehran has been abiding by the restrictions set on its uranium enrichment by world powers. Meanwhile, Iran has hit back at accusations made by Arab leaders that it's a threat to global security. Tehran described their condemnation as baseless and said Saudi Arabia was dividing the entire region. The leaders attended emergency summits in Mecca where Saudi King Salman called for Arab states to confront Iran. Iraq refused to sign a separate communique urging action on Tehran, warning aggressive rhetoric could make the situation worse. The Palestinian plight was also on the agenda, with President Mahmoud Abbas calling on leaders to reject President Donald Trump's proposed peace deal with Israel.
We call for an end to the Israeli occupation of Palestine and the establishment of a Palestinian independent state on the borders of 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital. I would like to also reaffirm our absolute stance against American attempts to undermine international law with what is called the deal of the century, to abolish the principle of a two-state solution.
And Qatar's prime minister attended the talks. It was the first high-level meeting since the 2017 blockade on his nation. Andrew Simmons reports.
This is the first high-level contact between Qatar and Saudi Arabia for nearly 2 years. The Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Nasser bin Khalifa Al Thani and Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz. The Saudis are trying to show they have wider backing in their effort to counter what they say is Iran's growing influence. The Qatari Prime Minister here briefly shaking hands with the King of Bahrain. Kuwait's Emir trying to encourage some dialogue, as he has done since 2017. He's been attempting to mediate in the dispute between Qatar and the blockading countries of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt. What the Saudis want to do is to try to project a united front.
The Iranian regime interfered in our internal affairs and developed ballistic and nuclear weapons. It affects navigation and international oil. This is a naked aggression against our stability and international security.
But Iraq objected to a communique attacking Iran, issued later, which supported the right of Saudi Arabia and the UAE to defend their interests following what they say were attacks on shipping and oil installations.
My brothers, in the midst of this tense time and the quick developments and a tense regional and international environment full of threats, we are watching before our eyes the escalation of a regional and international crisis which can turn into a war that will engulf us all.
The Saudis may have the support of the United States, but some observers think their tactics are high risk when the GCC is so divided.
Instead of uniting and unifying the Gulf region to stand as a bloc, a solid bloc, they are actually dividing it into different countries. They are disintegrating the regional organization, the GCC.
A reference there to the blockade of Qatar after allegations made by Saudi, the UAE, Bahrain and Egypt that the country backs terrorism, accusations firmly denied by Qatari leaders. Saudi Arabia isn't giving the impression any breakthrough is imminent.
Qatar participated in previous summits, so it is not new. It is true this time they were represented by the Prime Minister. The Saudi stance, like the other countries, is that we are looking for a solution for the causes of the problems and the crisis between these countries and Qatar. Hopefully there will be a solution if Qatar comes back to the right path.
But the issue of Iran dominates the thinking and talking. Saudi Arabia may regard support from the GCC and the Arab League as a diplomatic advantage, but with opposition led by Iraq, the message isn't one of full Arab unity. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera.
This has probably been one of the toughest years that I've experienced in my 40-plus years in farming.
American farmers hurt by Donald Trump's Chinese tariffs are not backing down from their support of the president. And a new memorial in New York to honor those who responded during the 9/11 attacks.
Hello again and welcome back. Well, here across the Levant, we are seeing some scattered showers across the area. Temperatures are on the rise as well. You see on the satellite those clouds passing through, particularly in the heating of the day. So for Tehran, not bad in terms of temperature, but we do expect to see some rain coming through as well here on Saturday. Baghdad on Saturday, 43, going up to 45 degrees as we go towards Sunday. And Kuwait City, an expected high for you of 41 degrees there. We're here in Doha. Temperatures are on the rise as well. We do expect to see 44 here on Saturday. Getting up to 45 degrees as we go towards Sunday. Very hot conditions here, but dry conditions. Maybe some clouds pushing through on the overnight hours. Over here towards Muscat, though, it is going to be a fairly nice day compared to the rest of the region with a temperature of 36 degrees there. And then very quickly across parts of southern Africa, we are going to be seeing some clouds pushing through parts of Cape Town as well as Port Elizabeth. Durban is going to be not too bad as we go towards Saturday. Maybe some clouds pushing in. We do have a flow off the water, though. Johannesburg is expected a high of 18 degrees. And as we go towards the rest of the weekend, we're going to be seeing dry conditions across Madagascar. We did have showers to the south, a temperature view of 21 degrees, and Harare, a temperature of 21 as well.
You're watching Al Jazeera. Let's recap the top stories now. The Mexican foreign minister is due to travel to Washington to meet with U.S. officials over the threat of U.S. tariffs. President Donald Trump says he'll impose tariffs on goods from Mexico unless it stops illegal immigration. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Berlin at the start of a four-nation tour. He's urging European partners to isolate Iran and to stop using technology from China's Huawei. And Iran has rejected accusations at a summit of Arab nations that it's a threat to regional and global security. 2 summits have taken place in Mecca, and a third is due to start later on Friday. Iranians have turned out in force across the country to mark Jerusalem Day. Demonstrations are being held across the region in a show of support for the Palestinian cause. Iran has marked the day since the start of its 1979 Islamic Revolution. It comes just weeks before the White House presents the economic part of its long-awaited peace plan in Bahrain. The Afghan Taliban has carried out a car bombing in Kabul, killing 4 people. 7 others were wounded, including 4 U.S. service members. The bomb targeted a military convoy in the city's western Kala Wazir district. Chinese tariffs on $60 billion worth of U.S. goods have gone into effect in the last hour. The battle between Washington and Beijing is taking a toll on America's Midwest. Many farmers are struggling as the trade dispute escalates. But for now, President Donald Trump still draws support from the region. John Hendren reports from Colfax, Illinois.
As the U.S. administration plows ahead in its trade war with China, American farmers say they're getting crushed between the world's 2 largest economies.
We grew a record soybean crop, record corn crop, and then you take the fact that our largest buyer just disappeared. You know, we created a huge ending stockpile that it's going to take years to eat through it, not to mention we tripled what we normally carry.
China's retaliatory tariffs on corn, soybeans, and pork have hit their mark. American farmers deep in Trump country across the Midwest are suffering.
This has probably been one of the toughest years that I've experienced in my 40-plus years of farming. Our bankers are starting to get nervous. Next year is going to be a tough time, that some farmers are not going to get their operating loans. They're not going to pay off their operating loans from this year, and they're not going to be able to get credit to put a crop out next year.
For the second straight year, President Trump signed a bailout for American farmers, this time $16 billion worth. But that won't bring back lost markets, buyers who've moved on to other sellers. Their silos are full of surplus crops. That oversupply has tanked prices for corn and soybeans. Farm income levels are half what they were 5 years ago. Across the Midwest, corn and soybean farmers are filing for bankruptcy in numbers not seen for more than a decade and losing their patience.
I'd like to see that light at the end of the tunnel and know when things are going to turn around and get better.
So your patience is wearing a little thin?
Just a little, yeah.
This year, farmers are dealing with high tariffs, low prices, and now historic rains that have left their fields flooded. But while China's tariffs are striking their intended targets, they have not achieved their goal of turning the farmers who are among President Trump's strongest supporters against the president. Is it fair to say that farmers still, by and large, support President Trump?
I think that's fair.
We believe that the president's doing the right thing.
To live on a farm, as an old agrarian saying has it, is to be schooled in patience. For now, those laboring behind America's plows seem willing to wait a little longer. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Colfax, Illinois.
Protesters in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, are defying warnings from the military to stop their sit-in outside the defense ministry. This was a scene as people took part in Friday prayers in front of the military headquarters. On Thursday, a senior army official said the sit-in had become a hub for criminals and was creating a danger for the state. And Al Jazeera has denounced Sudan's closure of its bureau in Khartoum, saying the network sees this as an attack on media freedom, professional journalism, and the basic tenets of the right for people to know and understand the reality of what is happening in Sudan. The network deplores the decision and assures its audiences in Sudan and globally that it will continue its coverage of Sudan despite this political interference by the Sudanese authorities. Now, the Committee to Protect Journalists has issued a statement in response to the action against Al Jazeera. The Middle East and North Africa coordinator says the raid and closure of Al Jazeera's Khartoum bureau is a worrying sign Sudan's military rulers and to suppress coverage of pro-democracy events. This action belies military leaders' statements, and they should immediately reverse course and allow Al Jazeera to operate freely. Kudah is a member of Garifna, a non-violent resistance movement in Sudan. He says journalism in general is under threat now.
Removing the freedoms of press and trying to have the world not see what's happening is a big deal. And I think this is a turning point, because what happened after April 11th and the collapse of the government is suddenly that government allowed journalists from all over the world to come to the sit-in, to come to Sudan and to cover this. And for them now to decide that, no, the world doesn't need to see this anymore, is a sign for us that things are changing and we're going back to them a crackdown and everything. So we're actually getting ready for a crackdown on the protest area. I mean, what's happening with the negotiation between the Declaration for Freedom and Change, we're talking from the point of the protesters with the Transitional Military Council, they reached a point where we're supposed to have a civilian government, and they reached a point where they not moving forward. Either the Transitional Military Council is going to give up power to the civilians, or they're not going to do it. And now we're more than 55 days into the sit-in, and we're thinking that now is the time, or we have to go back to fighting this government in another way, because they're not giving, the military doesn't want to give up power. So we're like waiting for them to give up power, and if they were serious about giving up power, they were not going to do a crackdown on the media. So we're like worried now.
Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban says he wants a thorough investigation into a boat accident on the Danube on Wednesday. At least 20 people are missing and feared drowned. At least 7 others are dead. Rescuers are still searching the river for survivors. Police have detained the captain of the larger ship that hit the sightseeing vessel. It was carrying 35 people when it was struck and sank within seconds. There's a new effort underway to identify more than 100 victims from a 1992 mass killing during the Bosnian War. More than 200 civilians were shot dead and dumped in a ravine by a Bosnian Serb police unit. It's taken nearly 3 decades to uncover many of the remains and return them to families for proper burial. Paul Brennan reports.
In the garden of his home in Ternopolje, 78-year-old Muharrem passes his retirement in silence. His 2 sons, Emin and Emir, were in their early 20s when they were both killed at Korechani Cliffs. After 27 years, he's now been told that their remains have finally been found.
A jawbone was found 10 or 12 years ago, but they didn't know which of them it belonged to. Now the full remains were found in that mass grave.
Emin and Emir were exhumed from a site known as the Stone Mass Grave. The corpses were hidden under a thick layer of rocks. In August 1992, a group of more than 200 Bosniak men were transported to the edge of the ravine, made to kneel, and then shot dead by Bosnian Serb police. The corpses are only now being recovered. Verhedin's father, Faridin, was one of the victims who have now been identified. He will be buried in July.
For the most part, it's all about who was found and who wasn't. Have the people responsible for the crimes been prosecuted? Why some didn't get more prison time? Those sorts of things haunt us.
Teofik faces having to say goodbye to his brother Abbas all over again. He already buried some of Abbas's bones found at Korechani Cliffs. Now a significant portion of the rest of the skeleton has been identified.
It's not easy, but this time around you're stronger. Still, I thought I was done with this 5 years ago. I guess this time I'll get actual closure.
Once exhumed, the bones are forensically examined at this centre. 112 sets of remains are currently awaiting final identification here. The final number of newly identified victims will reach 180. 180 people whose relatives have spent nearly 3 decades wondering.
We have here remains of slain sons and their parents, siblings, neighbors, all kept here together. This is in a way a unique situation. You could say that this was a family mass grave.
Each victim has a story. Uza Cernica was a teacher in Prijedor.
Teacher Cernica was killed by one of his former students, and it was another one of his old students who found his remains. One committed the crime, and the other one did the good deed.
In 2004, the leader of the police unit which carried out the massacre was convicted of crimes against humanity and sentenced to 17 years in prison. But it's only now that these victims can be properly buried that their families can have closure. Paul Brennan, Al Jazeera.
Algerians are protesting in the streets despite police reportedly arresting dozens of people in the capital, Algiers. Hundreds gathered in the city for the 15th Friday, calling for the interim president, Abdelkader Ben Salah, to leave office immediately. He became president after the ailing longtime leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika stood down last month amid public anger at him running for a fifth term. Elections are due to be held in Algeria in July. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has suffered psychological torture. That's according to a United Nations special rapporteur who also says Assange's health was critical and he should not be extradited to the United States to face charges of espionage.
Mr. Assange shows all the symptoms of a person who has been exposed to psychological torture for a prolonged period of time. So what we're speaking about is severe stress and constant stress, a chronic anxiety, severe psychological trauma. I am seriously, gravely concerned that if this man were to be extradited to the United States, he would be exposed to a politicized show trial in grave violations of his human rights.
A new memorial has been unveiled in New York honoring those who lost their lives in the 9/11 attacks. Many of the first responders continue to suffer from being exposed to toxins nearly 18 years ago. Kristen Salumi has more.
In the park where the Twin Towers once stood, the unveiling of a new memorial highlights the lingering impact of the September 11th attacks, particularly on first responders. Nearly 400 of them have died from 9/11 related illness so far. Thousands more are sick. At the ceremony, they mixed with dignitaries amid the slanted stones meant to honor them. Bridget Gormley's father, William, was a firefighter whose company was one of the first on the scene that day.
Everybody initially had the 9/11 cough, the World Trade Center cough.
It wasn't until 2016, though, that he was diagnosed with bladder cancer.
I don't think any one of us should be making the choice to perish. And we started accounting for everything, starting with our lives, because so many people were killed because of some indiscipline.
Over 800,000 people were killed in the Rwandan genocide in 1994. How much of the events leading up to this tragedy do you know? And how has the road to peace been since then? In a documentary that takes a comprehensive examination of the events from the point of view of contemporary witnesses and insiders, such as President Paul Kagame, as they describe the events with inside knowledge and address many of the questions that have remained unanswered since the genocide. Catch this Deutsche Welle documentary, Paul Kagame and the Rwandan Tragedy, on City TV this Saturday at 12 noon and the repeat on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. City TV, it's your world.